Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and it's Monday. I'm joined by Mike Jones and also Scott Chancey from Community Transit. Hello to both of you.
Hey, Dale.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks, Mike.
You know that we've used Scott Chancey as a perfect example of what bureaucrats working for the county can do, how they can run a department and save a bunch of money and seem like really good guys. But I'm a little concerned. And you just knew this had to happen because eventually it seems like everyone in government drinks the Kool-Aid. And now I hear about this program that Scott Chancey has going on called Stop Improvements. Now just wait a minute. Scott, what the heck is going on with Stop Improvements?
Well, you actually missed a critical word in that statement, and it's transit stop improvement. So what we're doing is we're not stopping any improvements, we're improving the transit stops.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, it kind of changed the overall context of the statement. But yeah, that's one of the things that we've been working on is we go out and strategically locate benches and stuff like that on our routes that encourage people to use the transit system. So, for example, if we know on one of our routes that the bus is only going to come by every hour, we try to make sure that there's benches so if somebody shows up early that they have a place to sit. So that's what we've been doing. We have 10 I'm going to be putting in here pretty quick as soon as we get city permits, and they're specifically geared towards our Route 20, which goes out Rogue River Highway and kind of loops around on M Street and then back behind Walmart.
So that people know, so they don't get confused, with the exception of the bus that goes to Medford, all your buses are blue, right?
That's correct. For the most part, I have 4 blue vehicles, and those are running around town. We do have some white ones still that we use, like, for instance, if we're washing our blue vehicles, which we wash our vehicles about 3 times a week. So if they're in being washed or worked on in the maintenance department, I have to put something else out. But for the most part, all the blue ones are what we have here in town. And then the large one we send to Medford on the Rogue Valley commuter line. And we also use that vehicle to go to Cape Junction because the passenger loads, or they're so high of ridership going to Cape Junction and back that it overwhelms the amount of seats that we have. So we have more passengers than we have seats, so we send the big one there as well.
So has this problem decreased with the people who traditionally sit in this? There's a certain kind of people, a certain group of people who sit in a restaurant in the morning and they're always looking out the window saying, "There's almost nobody on that bus." And have they gotten over that yet?
I don't know if they have, but more than likely, if that's their only static point of view from that restaurant at that particular point of day, they're not going to actually understand when we're talking about things like our ridership, because that location is about it's about 3 blocks from where we start a route. So typically when you start a route, you don't have a whole lot of people on it, and especially in the morning, because ridership gains as you go down the line. So our first stop after the courthouse is Dutch Brothers, which is further down than where those people are sitting observing our vehicle and claiming that it's empty.
One of the reasons why... Go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I interjected without opening my mic, and that's a big no-no. Go ahead.
Oh, well,
I would like to say though that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, gee, this latency thing sometimes causes a problem. Lactose intolerant people, latency, it's all the same thing. One of the things, the reasons why you as an audience would be interested in this, or should be interested, isn't that you take the bus all the time. The question is, and I believe it's answered by Scott Chancey, can our county government operate in an efficient way, spending the money right, pretty nice about it, open and transparent. The problem that Scott Chancey has, and it's just exacerbated, sorry Scott, by us paying any attention to him at all, is here's an example of a guy that can do it right, I mean, if you're just interested in politics, he can do it right. And I would imagine that there are some people, I don't expect Scott to answer this, that just drives him crazy. Scott, stop providing this good example.
I'm providing a good transit example. I'm trying to set us up as a role model for the state for small urban systems, and I think we're doing pretty well at that. And that's been my goal from day one, and it continues to be. And it's starting to play out in terms of where we stack up against our not our competition, but our peers. And that was one of the other things I was hoping to talk about today.
Now, how in the world can this little system down here in the southern part of Oregon, with a population that isn't exactly bursting at the seams, how can we provide any kind of competition at all for the big boys up north? How's that possible?
Well, I basically, the short answer is I took a different approach, and a lot of transit agencies or providers think that as long as there's a route on the road that they've done their job, and I look at my job as a little bit differently, and I talk about this quite frequently, but I look at it as our job is not just being satisfied with putting a route on the road and saying we're done and wiping our hands and figuring, well, the only people that want to ride it or would ride it have no choice, so we shouldn't even improve our system because these people really wouldn't have a choice of anything regardless of what we put out there, and I don't think that's the correct attitude. And I look at it as we're selling a product, and that product is mobility. So if you take that approach and then you look at it in terms of system design, and if you look at the way your road is designed, your roadway isn't designed to take you all over the place or kind of take you in circular motions, is to get you from point A to point B in the quickest amount of time possible. So we've taken that approach and we've continued to build on it, and so we basically have an urban design system in a small urban area. So when you compare our operating statistics to what's being collected by the Federal Transit Administration for agencies, they're 200,000 in population to what is it? 1 million? It's 999,999. There's 5 statistics that they measure, and for each statistic that you meet or exceed those large urban areas, you get an extra bonus in your operating money of $192,016. Yeah, but what the crazy part is here we are in an area of 50,520 is our actual population. It's what's determined from the Census Department. So we're 50,520 deep in terms of population, and we're competing with those 6 statistics for areas that are 200,000 plus. Now, we're not going to match every single category in terms of those statistics, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to meet at least 1 or 2. So the interesting thing is if we meet 1, we get an extra $192,000 for operating money. And if we get 2, then that's $384,000 and change in operating money. And I think we're going to actually do 2.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was all excited at first, and then I started to go through the statistics, and then there's actually 2 areas that are smaller than us that actually are in the same playing field in terms of beating some of these operating statistics. But so we're the 5th smallest urban area in the nation, and we're going to start matching some of these statistics for areas that are over 200 to under 1 million in population. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Now,
say that again, would you? I'm sorry, Mike, but would you please say that again? In the nation?
Yeah, we're the 5th smallest urban area in the nation. So with 50,000, you have to be 50,000 to be considered an urban area. So we're 50,520, and we are going to meet or beat 1, maybe 2 of the operating statistics of areas. This is nationwide, that are between the population of 200,000 and 1 million. So essentially, we're as productive with our transit system here in Grants Pass, Oregon, as areas that are 4 times this size. And currently, the only area in Oregon that meets any of these statistics is Corvallis, and Corvallis is obviously, the Oregon State University is there, so there's a large draw for their population base. But yeah, it's something that it's pretty unique, and it's for bragging rights only. believe it or not, because even though we get additional operating money, you have to match it. So it's a dollar for dollar match.
Mm. So free pizza on the bus? Is that what's going to be
Well,
happening
there's
with
no
this
eating or drinking on the bus, so maybe we could figure something else out.
Yes.
Maybe we'll do a whole week free or something. I don't know.
Wow.
I won't know for sure until we report again, which will be after July 1, 2015. But what I'm looking at now is I'm confident we're going to beat one, if not two.
Now, important thing to remember about important thing to remember about Corvallis is how much do they charge their patrons to ride on the buses in Corvallis?
That's a great point that I forgot about. There is no fare in Corvallis, meaning that there's no charge when you get on the bus. There's no monthly pass. There's nothing. So they have a fareless system, so it's free to everybody.
Wow. How are they doing that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, and I specifically haven't talked to them in a while, but the last thing that I was checking on or was reading about is the city of Corvallis itself decided to subsidize the system. So
wow.
What the transit system said is, hey, we collect $300,000 a year in fares, so if we're reimbursed that amount, we'll remove the fares for everybody, and that's what they decided to do.
Hey, Mike.
Wow.
Mike.
Yeah.
This guy is competing with Corvallis, which is a college town, university town, and their fare is $0. And this guy, Scott Chancey, is competing with them and beating up these urban areas around the country. There are 1 million, and we're doing better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I mean, there is a need, and there isn't any question. I think that, the economy has to be a driver for people, in their need of public transportation. And as far as I can see, you guys do a great service, not just locally here, but that Rogue Valley commuter line has to be gaining in popularity too.
Yeah, it is, and I can talk about that here in just a second. But just to kind of give you an idea of where we've gone, and this is if you do nothing but concentrate on what your job is, and ours is to provide public transit, and ours is to provide viable public transit. If you concentrate 100% on that, it's kind of amazing what you can do. So, for example, our ridership has increased 168% since when I got here in 2009.
Wow!
So to put that into perspective. Yeah, 168%. So the first year I was here, we averaged 6,945 passengers per month. This year we're averaging 16,651 passengers a month. So when you break it out, in terms of per day and per month and stuff, you start to see what that significant increase is. And there's been no advertising, there's been no additional service hours added, there's been nothing. That's just what's going on in town. And so it's something that I'm pretty proud of. And if you look at the amount of seats being taken up, getting back to that whole empty bus argument, our entire system is running at 50% capacity. So that means if a vehicle has 25 or 20 seats in it, which they have more, but we'll simplify the math here. So if the bus has 20 seats in it, on any given time, there's at least 10 people in it. Now, on our main route, it's running at 76% capacity. So that's on average 19 passengers at any given time that you look at that bus. And which also means is if you're at 76 on average, you're well over 100% multiple times per day. So that's kind of where we're at. We're growing rather rapidly to where it's kind of we're running out of room.
No kidding. Now, look, here's many times what people depend on from us, besides this news that you just, and we're the only ones with this news, by the way, everybody. We're the only ones, okay? But what people expect from this show, it's on every day, is we don't have the sheriff come on and say, what's your favorite color? We don't do that kind of thing. We're nice about it, but we ask tough questions. Scott, this will probably be the toughest question that we may ever ask you, and certainly the toughest one on this show.
Gird yourself.
Yeah, get ready, Scott. Here we go. I don't know how I'd be able to answer this question or how Mike would. Scott, we're doing very well with this system here. We're beating the pants off of just about everybody else. Is this due to the fact that there's something in our population that's making it grow exponentially, or is it something having to do, honestly now, you got to be honest with us, about your management?
I would say, not bragging, but it has to do with, it's not just my management, it's my philosophy on what transit should be, and the complete buy-in that I've gotten from everyone from my dispatchers all the way down to the drivers, and they can see how it works. And it's transit's pretty logical, and if you just focus on what you're supposed to be doing, and that's what I've done, and that's all we continue to do. As far as the population specifics for Grants Pass, it's no different than anywhere else in the nation. Sure, there's some unique characteristics to Grants Pass, but propensity to use transit is pretty consistent across the board, and you're not going to find just some sort of anomaly in Grants Pass. So I'm going to attribute to me and my staff.
Mike, don't listen to this, Scott. Mike, here's this guy, and he's running the system, and he comes in with a logical plan. In government, he's coming in with a logical plan. He does things under budget. They're not even advertising. They're beating systems. They're college towns where the fee is free. We're beating places that have 1 million people living there. We're competing on a national basis, and he seems like, at least he's tricking us, seems like a nice guy. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, you know what? It's interesting that we're talking about this, because I heard some story on the news this morning where they're talking about that they're going to start micromanaging, transportation specifically, and it had something to do with people living healthier lives, and somehow there was some governmental organization that was going to come in and micromanage and make sure that we're all doing the healthy things, instead of doing what they should be doing, which is what he's talking about. He says transportation is a very logical thing. You're going from point A to point B, and you're providing a ride for such and such, so-and-so, and you try and do it as efficiently as possible. That's what government should be doing, in my estimation, and not trying to micromanage our lives to make sure that I'm not eating too many hamburgers or something.
Now we're going to get back to Scott.
Yeah, and I totally. I was going to say, I totally agree with what Mike was saying, and I do hear a lot of those stories. And the way I look at it is this: I don't want to force people to use public transportation. I want them to choose to use public transportation and have it work for them, and then have it be a viable option. I think, there's some agencies that think, well, if you increase the cost of parking, these are in larger urban areas, the cost of parking, you make driving more cumbersome, those kind of things, that you'll drive public transit. And I think I would rather take a different approach, and I would rather...
Thanks for tweaking my memory. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think we must have been listening to the same program.
I mean, this is my life, though, so I hear it all the time, and a lot of people refer to public transit as social engineering or something of that nature, and I'm proving the point is if you make it a viable option, people will choose to use it. There's people, in the long term, everyone has an option, so there's no such thing as a captive rider, which is another thing you hear in our industry, and that means somebody that doesn't have a choice, you've captured them. My opinion is if everybody has an option in the long term, and if you don't respect that option from day one, then in the long term you will lose them as a passenger, whereas hence we try to get new passengers and keep them in the system by giving them a very good product at an affordable price. We respect their time and their money, and that's what we move forward with, and it's been proven to be highly successful. You don't have to, again, get into social engineering to encourage or force people to use transit. People are logical. They're, in terms of using their money and their time economically, they will use transit if you provide them with a good option, and that's what we do.
No, just listen to this guy.
It was kind of interesting. It conjured this. Hang on a second. When you said, capturing somebody, that
Mm-hmm.
was conjuring an image of. Did you ever see the movie Misery, where the guy's got in a car accident and he's laying in the bed and what's her name? I forget the famous actress.
Kathy Bates.
Yeah, Kathy Bates comes in and hobbles him.
Right.
Right, exactly. You're not trying to hobble somebody so that you're the only option. That's
or force them to use
yeah,
public
that's the
transit.
wrong approach. So, people are going to drive. I'm completely aware of the fact that not everybody's going to use transit. Not everybody can use transit. Transit's not useful for everybody, and I'm not going to try to make it useful for everybody. I'm going to provide them with an option that if they choose to use it, they can, and it works. That's what we do here, and that's 100% of why we are competing with the larger metropolitan areas in terms of their operating statistics, because of that approach and attitude that we have here.
And Scott's doing it. What as an audience, what you really need to do is you need to place this in context. We're always trying to place things in context. You go over to, Scott probably won't want to talk about this, you go over to Jackson County, and you've got 69, oh, he knows what I'm going to say. You got $69,000 fare boxes. For a fare box, $69,000. You come into the city, and they spent, what was it, $100,000 on a bus stop, okay? And then you go elsewhere in county government, and they got all this money put out there to put a plaque on a rock. And you look for Scott's plaque on a rock symbols, and they're not there. He's just trying to be a public servant that does a good job for the county. And the reason that's so amazing, I mean, in a good world, you wouldn't have to say, "Good job, Scott. Wow, that's amazing," because it'd be expected. But in context, it's astounding. It truly is.
Yeah, you probably don't like the label bureaucrat, though, do you, Scott?
No. No, I'm the furthest thing from a bureaucrat. That's why I hide over here in our transit office, and we just keep plugging away, and I deal with operational issues and stuff like that. So I try to keep a low profile, and just it enables me to concentrate on what we need to concentrate on.
Well, that low profile's not working out so good for you there, bud. And
yeah, you're not helping, Dale.
And one of the reasons he has to hide is he's got to be hiding from other people who are throwing money away, wasting it, bad reputation. They can't seem to tell the truth. You ask Scott something, and he just tells you flat out, "Well, yeah, I'm giving the money to my friends. What else would I be doing?"
So, Scott, what do you have specific plans for the money if you happen to?
Yeah, that's what we need to do now is most agencies have what's called a transit master plan, or it's a long-term plan of what you foresee in the next 20 years, in 5-year increments, so 5, 10, 15, and 20 years out. I'm in the process right now of putting together. I already have the money to do the plan. I'm getting ready to hire a consultant. And so this will be the development of Josephine County's Transit Master Plan. So what that outlines is our funding priorities. What happens? What are our funding priorities in terms of if we got more money? What are our service priorities in terms of if we got more money or our money was reduced? So where are the critical services that we're going to do? We're going to be talking about our operating policies in terms of how the system operates, what we allow our vehicles to do, what we don't, what we allow passengers to do, that kind of thing, as well as a capital plan, which we'll talk about vehicle replacements, facilities, that kind of thing. And there will be a considerable amount of public involvement involved in the development of this plan, because it's the community's transit plan. It's not me. I'm just the one that is operating it, or I'm the one that's figuring out how to implement what those plans are and put them on the road. So anybody that's curious about transit or wants to be involved in the transit plan for this area over the next 20 years, keep an eye out. I'm sure it'll hit the county website. I will be doing some public involvement in terms of advertising, looking for people to get involved. They can call me directly. If somebody has a disagreement with transit, I would invite them to be involved in that plan as well, because if the community doesn't feel that transit's a worthy need, Let's just be honest about it. So let's just have those discussions. And the main thing that what this transit plan is going to do is it's going to talk about and say what type of system should be here in Josephine County, because with transit you need some clear objectives, and a lot of them conflict with each other in terms of what the community wants and what they expect. So, for example, do you want a system that produces the highest ridership that you can with the highest fare box return? Is that what the system should be designed to do? Because we could do that. I could run service just up and down 6th and 7th Street, and we could probably put all of our resources there and get the highest ridership we can, the highest fare box return. But is that really what we're supposed to be doing? Or are we supposed to be having a system that's based on coverage or equity, where everyone gets a small amount of public transit regardless of where they live in the county? I mean, so what is the design of the system? Which of those areas are we going to focus on, or is it a combination of the two? And if it is, what does that combination look like? Are we a service that's maybe 60% services designed for ridership increases or improving ridership, and maybe 40% on coverage for areas like, let's say, further out Rogue River Highway, where there's very low population and maybe there's a very few transit riders, but those people really need that service. It's a lifeline in effect. So where's the balance? Because without that guideline, or without some guidance from the community, it makes it very difficult to decide how you are going to put that service out there and what your focus is going to be. So we will be looking for considerable community involvement to put that plan together. And
hey, Mike, one of the things where there's some connection here, Mike, I'm talking to you now, but about this is that here we do this media extravaganza, this thing that we're doing with media, and we've gotten a lot of questions from people saying, well, where's your monetization, and why aren't you doing it the same way the Courier and KJO does it, and etc. Here's a guy that set up a system that's working. It's getting national attention. It's growing. The ridership is growing. He's calling in a consultant, and so he's been personally responsible for seeing that it gets up to a certain level. What's his next step? To consolidate power, to build a bigger kingdom? No, to open it up to the public, to let them have their input on this, so that they can be part of the process.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, well, that's what it needs to be, because we can provide transportation, from the far north of the county to the far south and east and west, but is that what the community wants? And it shouldn't be just my opinion. I can tell them what the drawbacks are, or if you choose one or the other, or what your choices are. That's what my job is the community's job to decide what they want from their system, and we're at that point now. Yeah, and we're ready to move forward, and I desperately want input.
Dale's having some serious conflict here, because this, I guess something about this is rubbing him the wrong way, or at least differently than what he's used to here.
Well, differently is right, because just look as an example. We don't even need to name names, although we always do. Recently, people came in and they were complaining to the other two commissioners about the way they'd been treated by Cheryl Walker. And Scott can't comment on this. I already know that, Scott. And so they were saying, where's the transparency? Where's the public servant attitude? And they said, we talked with a couple of people working with this project, and they indicated to us that they knew there were some problems. Cheryl's first and last question was, what are the names of those people? You tell me the names of those people. I need to know the names of those people. This is not what Scott's doing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that is good. Now, you were gonna tell us something about the commuter line.
Oh yeah, the commuter line is still going. Still have not advertised on this thing yet either, because we were working out some of the kinks. I needed to make sure that our vehicles were up and running, and our mechanics were familiar with them, and there's not any sort of unforeseen event. So we're now up to, I think this month we're averaging, this will be probably the third month in a row that we'll average over 70 passengers a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's getting to be about a 50-50 mix now. So before there was more people getting on in Medford than we're getting on over here. But one of the interesting things is I will be doing a passenger survey probably next month, and I'll have more information on who's riding or essentially who's not riding. And I'm actually looking forward to that because there's something really unique going on that system with the ridership that's not similar to normal transit lines, which you would see. There's a lot of one-way trips, and I don't know where those are coming from or why people are only riding one-ways, but there's more one-way trips than I would have expected. Now, this is all speculative on my part because I'm just getting anecdotal evidence from riders and the drivers, but there's something interesting going on. So once we figure out kind of what our passenger profile is, we'll start advertising a little bit more and start to see those numbers grow. I'm pretty happy with that. Last month was the 6th month that we've been in operation, and it's been very, very well received. And to be closer to the 100 passengers a day, which is what we had figured when I modeled the whole thing, to be pretty close to that within that first year of service is pretty exciting. So it's been going very, very well. And it would be nice if there was something started on the other end coming towards Grants Pass at the same time that we were leaving here. So we were working bi-directionally. That would increase ridership even more, but that's probably, we'll save something for the future to shoot for. So that's something that we'll have to talk about with our neighbors to the south.
Well, one of the things that
plan at some point in the future. Oh wow, that must be a really heavy delay there.
Sorry, but
is there any plan in the future, or I mean, do you ever get to a point where subsidizing of this is not required?
It's in the United States. It's very rare unless you have some sort of a monopoly on the transit system. So, for example, there's some ferry systems that operate, let's say, in British Columbia, and they're monopoly providers where there's limited options in terms of how to get from point A to point B, and there's only a limited number of providers that'll do that. Those guys make a profit or kind of break even. The problem is you can make a profit doing it, and look at Greyhound. There's a great example. Oh, and that brings up another point. But anyway, Greyhound is, I think a ticket's $19 from Grants Pass to Medford.
Wow.
Yeah, you can raise the rate up to a point where it's just not economically feasible for the majority of people unless they just don't have any other choice.
Well, you're beating the pants off of that.
I know, but listen to this. This is the funniest part, is there are people that are using our system to come from Medford to get on the Greyhound and Grants Pass because they're saving $19+ in their ticket. I just heard about that one last week, and I'm like, I can't believe that. So yeah, there's people that are they're saving $17. So to get to a point where we can make profit, or let's say break even on that commuter line, yeah, obviously the fares would have to come up a little bit. What that would have to be, I don't know. But it's one of those things. When I first started, I said if we're ever going to see a transit line or service break even, it's going to be this one. So I think that the possibility is there. It's just I don't know what those numbers look like until we get a little bit more data.
Well, one of the places where this, besides going down to Medford, one of the places where this whole plan could go south would be Thank you, Scott. We'll be here all week. Is in this idea of the advisors. I remember when I was at the airport advisory board, and there was this guy that was on a lot of boards. In fact, he even had special cards made up that folded out that indicated all the boards he was on. He was so proud of being on all these boards, really. And so there's a certain class of people that are here in Grants Pass and Josephine County that would love to be on a winning board. Oh, look at what I've done, and there are certain economic advisory groups, which shall remain nameless, that would love to come in and say, look what we've already done for you, when they haven't been involved at all. And so how are you going to avoid the temptation to grab up the first advisors that come in the door instead of going out and finding people that aren't typically chosen as advisors to a transit system? How about people that actually use the system rather than just wanting to be on a board? Scott?
Yeah, well, obviously, anybody that wants to be involved, they can be involved in the development, or it'll be a public advisory committee for our transit master plan. So anybody can be involved as a taxpayer, as a resident of the county. You have a right in terms of getting people that want to be in, that are users or representatives of users. That's not really going to be that difficult, I don't think. Just because there's so many people that across the board that utilize our system. So, just for example, the hospital, or Road Community College, or and I do have an advisory body or a group already that is that are volunteers and appointees by the county commissioners that do advise me, and so they'll all be involved, and there's 9 people there as well. So it'll be difficult, but we'll just advertise and try to get people involved. And like I said, even if somebody doesn't agree with public transit or thinks it ought to be completely different, night and day from what it is now, I want them involved as well, because it is their tax dollars too. So I think we're just going to have to hit the ground and see what shows up, and if not, we'll just keep digging deeper till we get enough people.
Wow.
And if worse comes to worse, maybe we'll have a meeting and cater lunch.
Not on the taxpayer's dime.
I'll be here all week too.
Yes, I gotcha. Okay, it was a joke. Haha. Yeah, well, the fair board, not the fair board, the parks board used to do that. Oh, we have to buy special shirts, expensive shirts, and catering luncheons, kind of stuff, because these are volunteers after all. Oh, really? On my dime? I don't think so. So
yeah, no, the lunch thing was a joke. But that's that's how it is. That was a joke, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have to do that to get people involved. But I was at an agency that actually did that. So.
Wow, Mike, what do you think, bud?
I think we ought to can this guy.
Uh-oh.
I'm sure there are people who feel that.
I'm doing all this for bragging rights, so I got a pretty good resume now built for myself.
Right.
He didn't mean that kind of can, like toss you away. He meant put you in a can and sell the contents, not can you. Can you?
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's what I meant. Oh, okay.
Right?
Right. No, I thought since everybody was cracking jokes here, I'd throw my own in.
Okay, that was a good one too. Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Well, Scott, really, I mean, you've had a chance to tell us about what's happening, a successful program. Just be warned, there's going to be people who are going to want to jump in now and talk about how they were involved from the beginning, even though they don't even know what you do.
That's true. Well, I have some books here that if anybody ever wants to borrow one that talks about public transit, so if somebody wants to jump in and claim credit, I would highly recommend that they read one of these books first.
Yes.
Well, that's more than enough.
Would know a little bit about what they're talking about.
Yes.
It's more than enough good news for the entire week, Scott. Wow, that's.
Yeah, I'm exhausted. It's only Monday.
Wow. Amazing. Well, it's always great that, we do try to make a real effort to get people on this show and on badcounty.com and on goodcounty.com. It does exist. We try to do that because we live in this county, and it's not all bad. It's just, well, sometimes mostly bad when it comes to government. And so when you hear somebody that's doing a really good job and tearing it up and making it work, it has to be galling to those who are just incapable of doing that. They don't care. Thank you, Scott, really.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, I like to talk about transit. It should be pretty apparent by now. And I appreciate, the forum that you give me to freely talk about some of these things that are coming up. So I do appreciate you guys' help as well.
It's good for us not to be known as only people who say something negative all the time, and our audience as well. It's good for you to have something that you can celebrate. And if you think of it in no other way, think of it as comparing these jokers over here a plaque on a rock, and this joker over here that's competing on a national basis. Wow.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Well, thank you.
Very cool, Scott. So do you have anything to leave us here? You want to take us out? You want to tell us the last thing that we all need to know, that if only everybody knew this, that your life would be so much simpler?
Well, the only thing I guess I got left to talk about is that we've grown so big that we are going to go to larger heavy-duty buses. So those blue ones that you see now, they're going to be bigger than those, but smaller than the Rogue Valley commuter line bus. So community, I guess, for those that have an issue with our vehicles now, I just want to forewarn you, they're going to be a little bit bigger because we got to be able to put more passengers in them, and I hope to have those vehicles probably in the fall of this year.
Sound like a high-class problem to me.
Yeah, everybody should have
a good
that
one
problem.
to have.
Oh man! All right, thank you so much, Scott. You made my day, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you, Dale, and thank you, Mike.